Hello, my dearest members. We are back with some more Unfinished London. I don't know if this series is exclusively going to be a members only thing or not from now on. I just thought, hey, we did cars, planes, and trains for the main show when we did it. Now let's do bikes. Why not? That is one of the things that I'm really interested when it comes to transportation, bicycles. So here we have episode 5, which is why isn't cycling normal in London? Which I would wonder why. Like, cities usually have a lot of bicycling, don't they? Because cars are congesting up the roads and all that. It seems like something that would be normal, but I guess it's not normal over there. And the other one is why drivers should want cycle lanes, which, okay, that should be really interesting here. This lady does not look very happy, but we'll see what's going on here. Let's get this one started.
Me? Cycle in London? No! I'll die!
You gotta be stark raving mad to cycle in London.
I would cycle, but there were too many roads.
I've tried cycling once, but there was a bus on the other side of the road. Ah!
What's wrong with these people? Cycling is good exercise, it's free, it's fun, you can change your route as you please, you can park anywhere, it's usually faster than the bus, sometimes faster than the tube, and yet for some reason, cyclists in London are still a rare and strange breed. So why isn't cycling...
I look at the road here, I can't tell if this line right here at the edge is where the cycling lane is, if they have one there. In this next shot here, it looks like there's like no cycling lane. Like this right here, it doesn't appear that there's any room for a cyclist on the side here, so I don't know.
So why isn't cycling normal in London? Is it to do with the way the streets were built? Or is it something embedded in our culture? Or is it a complicated and nuanced mixture of the two, combined with several other surprisingly interesting factors that will take about 10 minutes to discuss?
Oh, I hope it's the latter. I hope so much that it is the latter. So I had copyright issues with the last time I did Unfinished London. So if there's any copyrighted music, that's more the problem. It's not Jay Foreman claiming my video. It's the music from whatever he used it like Beatles songs in the last ones that I checked out. So that ended up being a little bit of a problem on my end. So if there's any parts that are that sound quiet or muffled or weird, it has something to do with me removing the music. Or if there's like a cut anywhere that feels unnatural, that's the answer to that. So if anything weird happens from this point on, you know what the reason is.
Cycling infrastructure in London has been around longer than you might think. As far back as the 1930s, when hardly anyone drove, the wise town planners decreed that cars and bikes don't mix. New suburbs in Morden, Perivale and Romford were furnished with shiny, wide, segregated cycle tracks. The first of its kind was opened by Transport Minister Leslie Hoare-Belisha in 1934. But they weren't really used much.
Cycling groups at the time hated these so-called cycle tracks. They were worried that they'd be forced to use them and then banned from regular roads. Indeed, that's exactly what Leslie Hoare-Belisha wanted, saying that cyclists were the most dangerous people on the road today. So a cycling revolution never came, but a new...
So I live in a place where you have to really share the roads with cyclists, and it can be a pain if you're not perceptive, or if you're having trouble going around them or whatever. But yeah, sharing the road with a cyclist can be a pain, but it's not always the cyclist's fault. It could be that they don't have enough space to work with. If they have to share the road with you, that's inconvenient for them as well. So let's not resent the cyclist.
new revolution was just around the corner.
Introducing the new car. Think you can't afford a car? Thanks to technology, the new car is more affordable than ever. You can afford the new car. With a new car, you can drive around in your new car. Do you like your new car?
I love my new car.
As cars became more affordable, the roads became more full of them. And so, the 1960s planners, in their finite wisdom, altered London's existing streets to make more room for cars, and cyclists were completely forgotten about.
Historic Hyde Park Corner was turned into a massive scary roundabout where every lane is the wrong lane. So was Archway,
Oh, lovely.
Elephant and Castle, Waterloo, and Hammersmith.
I love every time roundabout comes up because it's a great excuse for me to ask people, what do they call those things where you're from? Those little circles in which traffic goes through. I talked to a guy the other day of the older generation around here who said that they used to call them traffic circles around here, or rotaries, but now we've switched to calling them roundabouts. I thought roundabout was the normal thing we called them around here, because we have so much in common with the UK, and it seems like they often use the term roundabout. I don't know. That's always interesting to me. Anytime that comes up, it's all I can think about. I love words that are different in other places.
The Westway was built, blech, and nearly all the 1930s suburban cycle tracks disappeared, some becoming lanes for cars, others becoming parking spaces. Unsurprisingly, over the next few decades,
That's
the number
depressing.
of cyclists in London plummeted. This terrifying video from about 1984 and a half, which believe it or not is trying to promote cycling in London, shows just how treacherous and horrible life on two wheels had become. It was cars won, cyclists dead. Meanwhile, in Europe, cities like Amsterdam, which in the 70s had similarly lethal roads to London, not to mention a few dead children, decided to do something brave. Over the next 3 decades, the historic streets were totally transformed to prioritize pedestrians and pedalers. Cars were banned from some streets, and new, segregated, wide, uninterrupted, smooth
kinda
cycle
lovely.
paths were built in the lanes where people used to drive.
Turning Amsterdam
Yeah, I think where I come from, like, our bicycle infrastructure can be, I guess it would be considered a little bit mixed. There are some good elements. There's, like, strong bicycle paths, though I wouldn't say that they're ideal for, like, broad transportation or anything like that. I think you're gonna end up in very specific places. Like, to get around just about anywhere on a bicycle, you'll get mixed results here. London is such a weird case. For some reason, I felt like they'd be on top of this.
inside out wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But eventually, cycling became the normal, default way of getting around. And it was cars that had to learn to wait their turn, keep out of the way, and go the long way round. Now, that doesn't mean that the Dutch are
13
bike-mad
minutes.
cycling enthusiasts. That's a bit like saying that everyone in Britain is obsessed with vacuum cleaners just because everyone's got one. In Holland, the Netherlands, there's no such thing as a cyclist.
These people are teachers, doctors,
Yeah, it's the Netherlands, but we often use the term Holland, like, interchangeably, even though it's not necessarily right.
lawyers, students, systems analysts, chartered quantity surveyors, and porn stars.
So, why didn't this happen in London? Actually, it's quite hard to say.
Maybe it's because we Brits have always been overly attached to our cars. In the 80s, cars were a status symbol. Margaret Thatcher famously probably said,
A man over 30 who finds himself on a bus can count himself a failure.
Oh, jeez. If she actually did say that, she's even more overtly terrible than I've heard. We had a big conversation last time I did this. I think it was last time we did Unfinished London, about whether or not British people even like Margaret Thatcher anymore, because I didn't know, because she always came off as, I guess, the British version of Ronald Reagan. I don't know. It seems like they have a lot of parallels. But it was kind of inconclusive. It seemed like generally it was negative, though. But I definitely didn't have a big enough data pool to work with. I could get the answer if I looked hard enough. I just haven't pursued it enough yet. Clearly, if I cared more, I would have.
politicians and planners who wanted to make cycling better always did so with their hands tied behind their back. They couldn't do anything to get in the way of our lovely cars.
Another possible reason is the way London was run for so many years. After Thatcher abolished the GLC in 1986, cycle infrastructure and the like was provided by London's 32 bickering boroughs. So there was no one to provide a citywide shift in culture. But that would all change in the year 2000. For the first time,
The distant
London had an
future.
assembly and a directly elected mayor with the power and budget to think big.
Ken Livingstone and the newly formed Transport for London, or TfL, had to tackle London's chronic congestion and pesky pollution, and they saw that cycling could play a vital role.
Although late to the party, with the right investment, London had the potential to become a cycling mecca just like Amsterdam. After all,
It's got the same climate, it's flat, mostly, the streets are wide enough, and most journeys in London are perfectly bikeable less than 2 miles.
it was totally doable. They had to do it soon, and they had to do it now.
Nearly more than 7 years later, Ken Livingstone stole an idea from Paris, the cycle hire scheme. Docking stations were to be planted all over central London, with bikes that were too heavy and conspicuous to want to steal, and anyone with a bank card and a pair of legs could hire them for a small fee.
They have these around where I'm from, but mostly I've seen like around colleges. They don't seem like they're in like the widest use where I'm from, but like if you're near a college, you can possibly find them. I believe they had an issue with them getting damaged or whatever, or getting dropped in like terrible places. I don't know if like the accountability just wasn't there. I don't know why. It just seemed like it wasn't the most effective way of doing it, but like generally I like the idea of these little rent-a-bikes just kind of laying around.
It took until 2010 for the scheme to finally get going, by which time London had a new mayor whose idea it wasn't, giving the scheme the misleading but memorable and durable nickname Boris Bikes.
They were an instant smash, popular with locals and wobbly
Oh,
tourists.
he was the
alike.
mayor at the
They
time.
helped promote
That's
the idea
interesting.
that urban cycling wasn't just for lycra-clad enthusiasts, but for everybody.
With so many new wibbly-wobblies on the road, it was more important than ever that London had safe streets to cycle on. And so, that very same year, along came the mayor's most boldest plan so far, the cycle superhighways.
This was a new special type of bicycle motorway for commuters that was long distance, clearly labelled, and painted luminous bright blue to match the colour of Barclays, who was sponsoring the whole thing. 12 cycle superhighways were planned, numbered like hours on a clock, radiating out from central London. The first to open in 2010 was CS7, which went over the underused Southwark Bridge, squiggled around Elephant and Castle, and followed the Northern Line all the way down to Collier's Wood. Next came CS2, which went east from Aldgate through Whitechapel and up to the future Olympic Park at Stratford.
But were these superhighways any good? No. Although very well signposted in a lovely shade of blue, there was nothing to physically separate cyclists from passing cars, buses and lorries.
Sometimes the blue paint would stop abruptly or merge with a bus lane or fill up with parked cars.
Oh.
Timid new cyclists, the very people this scheme was designed to make feel safe, didn't feel safe at all.
More worryingly, new-ish and confident-ish cyclists were lulled into a false sense of security. They'd start on an easy bit, and then, when the blue paint ran out, splat.
Just that made
Venera
for some reason.
Minakhmatova, a 24-year-old Russian businesswoman, was killed by a lorry at the notoriously inadequate Bow interchange.
Jeez.
One of 5 cyclists to die on the capital streets in just 2 weeks.
Wait a second.
Notoriously inadequate Bow interchange.
So that's a roundabout. Okay. Or is it? I'm confused. No, wait, there's like a roundabout with a bridge over it? Okay, that confused me for a second. Like, it seems like I remember when they first added a lot more roundabouts where I'm from, and there was like a crazy amount of accidents because people didn't really know how to use them. It's not like we didn't have any around here, but they were like few and far between. When they became more common around here, we started seeing far more accidents. I thought initially that it's because this was new, but I don't know if people got that much better. So I don't know. I always question whether or not are roundabouts more efficient than streetlights? And are they safer than streetlights? Efficient, I couldn't tell you, but from what I've seen, they don't seem to be that much safer.
One of 5 cyclists to die on the capital streets in just 2 weeks. It led to protests calling for the mayor and TfL to stop killing cyclists.
A closer look at the original superhighway designs reveals that they were dangerously ill thought through. According to this map, CS11 was supposed to go up the very narrow Kilburn High Road. And where exactly was that meant to go?
So TfL went back to the drawing board and took it more seriously this time. The next generation of cycle superhighways from 2013 onwards was a massive improvement. Physically separated from traffic with features like dedicated traffic lights and floating bus stops, these were proper cycle paths worthy of the Dutch. Have these new superhighways been a success? Yes. Cycling on these routes has increased a whopping 60%. At rush hour, 60% of all journeys are bikes. They even have cycling traffic jams. It demonstrates quite demonstrably that if you build it, they will come. Spurred on by the success of the cycle superhighways, the city was starting to send itself cycling silly. Look!
Alliteration!
Torrington Place is closed to cars westbound. Look! Bank Junction is buses and bikes only on weekdays. Look! Camden are filling their streets with armadillos. Armadillos! We're even starting to correct our mistakes from the 60s, turning former big scary roundabouts into much safer, albeit confusing, two-way inside-out question-mark-shaped junctions. In Ardray, Elephant and Castle, Waterloo.
Oh.
Not Hammersmith, though. It's too late for Hammersmith.
Yeah, those...
So everybody's happy.
That is one thing. We have some roundabouts that are like... I guess they're not roundabouts because they have a couple exits, but they don't go all the way around. There are one-ways. And I find there are less accidents on those things. So that's interesting.
Or are they? The cycling revolution has attracted criticism.
Like, this isn't stuff that I have data for. I've just witnessed a lot of broken cars on the side of roundabouts. So don't take anything I'm saying as like data. It's totally anecdotal.
Criticism from some groups like...
Bad luck and you're out of time. But you did very well. You did the history, you did the superhighways, you even went to Amsterdam. But there's still so much more to talk about. Will you come back for part 2?
Yes, I will.
Excellent. We look forward to it, don't we?
So will I.
Hello, one of the following two things is true. 1. Skillshare is a great online learning community for creators, or 2.
Okay, this video is like old as dirt, so I'm assuming... But their ads are so funny.
2.
Okay.
If you flap your arms very, 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 very fast, you can fly. Let's find out which one it is.
Lovely.
Well, there you have it. Skillshare is an online learning community with more than 17,000 classes for creators. If you like making things on the internet, like videos or animations or illustrations or podcasts or music, Skillshare is a really good way of learning how to do it really well. Also, premium membership costs less than $10 a month, which is the sort of money you'd lose down the back of the sofa.
What a deal. So, okay, I get the premise. I'm gonna move on to part 2. Because I have a brief recording window today. We're gonna learn more about bicycles. How much more could there possibly... Well, I guess we'll see. So, I guess the other part was like, how do we help people on bicycles get around? And now this is like, hey, what is the impact of decent bicycling infrastructure on drivers? I'd imagine it would decongest roads at least a little bit if it catches on big time. Naturally, roads would have to be redesigned. I could see how somebody on the face of it might say, I'm not really a fan of that. I want things to stay the way they are. But he's saying why drivers should want cycle lanes. So I'd imagine positives must outweigh the negatives, I guess.
There's a war going on London streets right now. 2 tribes, 2 wheels versus 4 wheels. Bicyclists versus carists.
Speaking personally as both a cyclist and a driver, I hate myself. But should I? Is it true that to provide infrastructure for one tribe, you have to screw things up for the other? Or can we learn to live side by side? Or one behind the other? Or weaving in and out of each other?
I love this intro. It's so fun.
As discussed in the previous episode, we've now got lovely cycle superhighways. But unfortunately, progress for cycling infrastructure has been grinding somewhat to a halt. The current mayor, Sadiq Khan, and I'm sorry to say this because I really like him, has been pretty rubbish for cycling. He's cancelled cycling projects left, right and straight down the middle.
Sadiq Khan. Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm throwing stuff on my desk. I just need to look up something. Sadiq Khan. Mayor of London, British lawyer, blah, blah, blah. Do I know this guy? No, I don't. Okay, I thought I heard about this guy. I guess I did. Oh well, whatever. Back to what we were doing, sorry.
So far has been the quiet ways.
The Quiet Ways are a benign and barely noticeable network of signposts and tipex guiding cyclists onto less busy roads. But it's hard to imagine who will benefit from them. Not timid new cyclists, because they still have to share with cars, and not experienced cyclists, because they won't want to go the wiggly squiggly long way round.
So, why is cycling being watered down in the capital? There are several different
like
groups
fun.
whose fault it is. In order to build cycle superhighways, TfL needs the cooperation of London's 32 local boroughs. The streets belong to them, and not all of them are enthusiastic about bikes.
Kensington and Chelsea, the Slytherin of the London boroughs, has been the most obstructive of them all. CS9, which in the original proposal was meant to go all the way to central London, was cut back in 2016 to stop here at Kensington Olympia. And CS3, which was originally planned to go all the way to Acton, now stops here at Lancaster Gate.
That doesn't do the job.
And it's not just
So you'd have...
Way to Acton now stops here at Lancaster.
I mean, that's still a good amount of space. You'd have to get off the path and like weave through all the danger of here. That doesn't seem like a good deal.
Lancaster Gate. Coincidence?
And it's not just the boroughs halting progress. Delays and cuts are also being caused by the curious Royal Parks Commission.
The Royal Parks of London are technically private land belonging to the Queen, not the local boroughs. So change here has always been slow and reluctant.
Electricity.
When the East-West Cycle Superhighway was announced, the Royal Parks dithered for so long over which way it should go through St James's Park, TfL were forced to publish this embarrassing map with the route still not decided, long after construction had started.
In a further poke in the tyres to cyclists, the Royal Parks installed speed bumps in Hyde Park on what used to be a really popular cycle route, hitting cyclists where it hurts the most. Their balls.
And the Church of Our Lady of Grace in St Edward in Chiswick has been calling on their parishioners to literally pray for CS9 not to be built outside their church.
Oh no!
So why do all these groups of people hate cyclists so much? What's their beef? Why don't they like cycle lanes? What's wrong with bicycle infrastructure according to them? Why do they have a problem with bicyclists? What for them is the reason that cycle infrastructure is such a bad thing? They give several different reasons. This man said that a cycle path would spoil the village-like atmosphere of Chiswick, but it was hard to hear him over the roar of traffic.
Spoil the village-like
mini Holland scheme, which removed car parking spaces, closed off.
I mean, cars kind of spoil the village-like atmosphere, unless we have a different idea of what that's supposed to be.
Shopkeepers in Walthamstow complained that the Mini Holland scheme, which removed car parking spaces, closed off rat runs and made the streets far more cycle-friendly, would cause all the shops to close down. But in fact, the opposite has happened and brought the area to life. So, Mrs. Panhandle from West Ruislip says,
Dear Unfinished London, why should the government spend millions of pounds on cyclists when it's us drivers who pay our road tax and cyclists pay nothing?
F you, Mrs. Panhandle. First of all, if that were true, that would be a good thing. Cars produce way more wear and tear on roads than bikes do. And second of all, it's not true. Road tax is not there to fund roads. It's an income stream for the Treasury like any other, and they can spend it on whatever they like. You wouldn't say freeloading pedestrians don't deserve street lamps.
Mrs. Panhandle's anti-cyclist attitude is sadly quite a common one, and this is not helped by the media.
According to nearly every bike-related article you read...
Okay, hold on, I
This is
wanna
not helped by the media.
read this one by one. Cyclists almost as likely to injure pedestrians as cars. Oh, really?
According to nearly every bike...
What smug and deserves to be decapitated? Oh, God.
related article you read about in the newspaper.
Why do cyclists think they can do anything they like?
Cyclists are dangerous.
Starting to think some of these are fake.
Whose fault it usually is when an accident happens. And if they choose not to wear a helmet, well, they only had it coming. This really annoys me, actually. The sort of people who say, why don't you wear a helmet, are usually the sort of people who've never ridden a bike in their lives, and they're only saying it because they want to absolve themselves of all responsibility for cyclist safety on the road. If you really want to make cycling safer, instead of giving everyone a helmet, give them a piece of paper saying, for God's sake, never ever go on the left of a lorry, because that's where almost every cycle death happens. By all means, wear a helmet if you want to. It could save your life if you're unlucky enough to land headfirst into anything, but as for making helmets compulsory, it doesn't make cycling safer, and if you don't believe me, look at Australia, a country where the wearing of helmets is mandatory and hardly anyone cycles, and then compare that to the Netherlands or Denmark, where everyone rides a bike and no one wears a helmet. You don't make an activity safer by discouraging people from doing it, you...
Ooh.
Whilst it's easy to dismiss these complaints as bunkum, there is one genuine, impossible-to-deny disadvantage that does come with the building of cycle superhighways.
The new cycle superhighway has necessitated the removal of a lane of traffic, resulting in increased congestion. But with less people being on the road, one would assume that it would relieve congestion. So it's like, how many people does it take off the road? It used to be possible to go straight on at the junction, but now, since the cycle scheme, we are obligated to take rather circuitous route. Circuitous, there we go. My journey along Upper Thames Street now takes me an extra 15 minutes because of the cycle path. You're being mean.
Yes, it's true. Some cycle lanes, especially the good ones, do indeed take away space that used to be available for cars. But unfortunately, there's nowhere else practical for these cycle lanes to go. Some audacious architects have come up with some innovative suggestions for where else to put cycle paths other than the surface streets.
TfL proposed building CS3 high up on the Westway, conveniently crossing Kensington and Chelsea without having to ask their permission. But this was cancelled in 2017 because it was impractical and terrifying and no one was ever going to use it. Norman Foster, the architect responsible for Boris Island, proposed a network of elevated cycle paths called SkyCycle.
Oh, dude, that's like from Pokemon.
But this was even more unnecessarily elaborate, not to mention phenomenally expensive. And finally, in my opinion...
Sorry, that's like how I always imagined like the Pokemon bike paths would look in the games. Like, they had these like elevated bike paths. I don't know, that's a stupid comparison, I know, but it's the only thing I know that really resembles that.
The underwhelmingest of them all, a series of lifts around the Strand going down to disused tube tunnels converted into cycle paths with the deeply uninspiring name The Underline, which I can think of at least 12 better names than.
It's not rocket
I
science.
do want to look at some of those.
Name The Underline, which I can think of at least 12 better.
Cycling tunnel, cycle tube, cycle super subway, pedal tunnel, tunnel for bikes, Biketoria line, metro pedal lane line, under round and round. Okay, that's funny. Cyclarium, cycle cave, underbike, cavernous whirly gloom. Okay, that's
The names then.
wonderful.
It's not rocket science. In cities like London, where the streets aren't getting any wider, cycle paths do have to go on the road. If only we could redesign London from scratch. Imagine if our streets were wide enough for cars, buses, and bikes. That would be just perfect, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
Stevenage, 32 miles north of London, a new town built from scratch in the 60s where planners weren't limited by space. There are beautiful, segregated cycle paths everywhere. But
No
look,
fun. Nobody's using them.
The good people of Stevenage have no incentive to use their cycle paths. Their roads are just too acceptable. They don't get massive traffic jams even in rush hour, and all the shops have got free car parking, so why would they bother with the bike? What we learned from Stevenage is you don't just have to encourage people onto their bikes, you have to encourage them out of their cars. But what's wrong with cars? I'll tell you what's wrong with cars. Cars are incredibly space inefficient. That's what's wrong with cars.
look how many people are moving through the road when they're all in their cars. Not a lot. But watch what happens if you put them on bikes. Ooh! And it's not just bikers who benefit. Every single one of those
efficient, I would say.
is someone no longer taking up space on the tube, on the bus, or in a car.
Yes, even drivers benefit from cycle lanes in the long term. There will always be people that have to drive, like delivery vans and construction traffic and ambulances and giraffes in transit, and they'll all get where they're going much faster when the road is being used only by people that have a f***ing good excuse for being there. By the way, I haven't even been talking about pollution. It almost goes without saying that cars pollute and bikes don't. But you know what? Even if all cars were electric, they'd still be just as horribly space inefficient. This isn't about air quality, it's about sustainability. But it's also about air quality. So hurting drivers is not merely a byproduct of improving cycling, it's a desired effect. Saying that a cycle scheme doesn't work because drivers are unhappy, it's a bit like saying that a diet doesn't work because it's making you hungry.
London is not Stevenage. Its population is expected to hit 10 million by 2030. So if we're going to make room for everybody, cycling has to become more normal than driving.
That's why I'm worried that cycle progress isn't progressing. There's still loads more to do.
Huh? Ah. What was that?
So, to sum up, things are getting better for cycling, but not better enough. Perhaps the most troubling thing about the cycle superhighways is that name, superhighways. It makes them sound like they're the best they could possibly be, like they're rare and exceptional. Whereas if you show them to a Dutch person, they just think they're normal. In fact, they're the bare minimum.
The Dutch seem to know what they're doing.
London's cycling revolution is unfinished. These cycle lanes won't realise their incredible potential until they're everywhere. The superhighways won't be super until there's nothing super about them.
Back here, dude. Okay. Bird's on the floor. Look out for him.
Ow! Ah! I can't feel my legs! Ah!
I've always wanted a monthly subscription to Skillshare. Skillshare! A monthly Skillshare subscription's what I want. The thing I want is a monthly subscription to Skillshare. And the thing I do to a Skillshare subscription is want. What Skillshare is an online learning community with more than 17,000 classes for creators. It's got videos to teach you how to do stuff like make podcasts sound really good, make animations look really good,
I could use some of this,
or make
but
your skills with operating cameras really good. Personally, I'd recommend the Skillshare video about learning video editing with Premiere Pro, which I've genuinely used and it's been genuinely really useful.
Can I use Skillshare?
No, you haven't subscribed yet.
Aww.
But don't worry, subscribing only costs
can.
less than $10 per month.
I'm not supposed to tell you this, but if you click on the link in the description below, the first 500 of you will get Skillshare for free for the first 2 months.
Skillshare's good.
Alright, so there it is. We've gone all the way through Unfinished London number 6. I don't actually know how many there are of these. I think eventually we'll get around to doing more of them. I think they're really fun. It's a fun way of looking at geography in a very specific way. Like, of course, London is geographically its own sort of animal, so a lot of the ideas may not always be applicable to the broader world, but there is definitely a broader story that can be told and lessons that can be learned from London being such an old, very I don't want to say well developed, but very developed place. Clearly there are some less than well developed parts, but it's really fascinating. So if you want to see more of me doing the Unfinished London stuff, I'm down to do a little bit more. So we'll see when we get around to doing a little bit more of that. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to and spending the money to support the channel a little bit longer. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, it's been real and stuff. All right, so yeah, thank you, and I will see you guys when I do the next members only thing, or for the next stream, whatever comes first. All right, thank you.